The date is August 30th, 1993, and the venue is the Palace of Auburn Hills. The air is thick with anticipation, electric with the patriotic fervor of a nation ready to crown its new hero. Inside the squared circle, a titanic clash awaits. On one side, the formidable Yokozuna, an imposing, near 600-pound sumo champion representing the perceived enemies of America. He is the immovable object, the hated villain. His challenger is Lex Luger, the All-American, a chiseled specimen of pure muscle, a man whose physique alone seems to scream American greatness. This is it, the culmination of a months-long campaign orchestrated by Vince McMahon himself, a masterstroke of storytelling designed to make Lex Luger the next great babyface champion. The journey began with a helicopter landing on the deck of the USS Intrepid, where Luger, in a moment that felt like a scripted patriotic film, body-slammed the seemingly unslammable Yokozuna. The Lex Express was born, a red, white, and blue-painted bus that crisscrossed the nation, with Luger on a populist campaign trail, shaking hands and kissing babies, transforming from a self-obsessed heel into the people's champion. It was a grand, expensive, and meticulously planned narrative. This match at SummerSlam is now the climax, the moment where the story will reach its glorious crescendo, where America will finally get its new hero. The crowd roars, a sea of red, white, and blue. The bell rings. The two behemoths lock up in a battle of power and will. Luger, on the cusp of greatness, a man ordained by McMahon to carry the company into a new era, fights with a fire and intensity he had rarely shown before. He takes a beating, absorbing Yokozuna's brutal offense, including a leg drop and a near-successful banzai drop. But just as all seemed lost, Luger mounts a comeback. He finally manages to hoist the massive champion up and deliver the one move that had started this whole saga. He then hits the champion with a forearm smash, sending him tumbling out of the ring. The referee then counts to 10. The ring explodes with patriotic pandemonium. The lights flash, balloons and confetti rain down, and a parade of wrestlers rush to the ring to hoist Luger onto their shoulders. It was a scene of pure, unadulterated triumph. There was just one problem. The championship belt didn't change hands. Yokozuna, having been counted out, retained the title. It was a hollow victory, a triumph without the prize. The crowd celebrated, but the lingering feeling was one of a missed opportunity, a promise unfulfilled. The story was supposed to end with a championship coronation. Instead, it ended with a technicality. Luger would get another shot, a co-winner of the Royal Rumble with Bret Hart, leading to a title match at WrestleMania 10. And again, he would fall short, losing to Yokozuna via disqualification. The dream, it seemed, was over. McMahon's chosen one was abandoned. He would never again be pushed as the company's top star. He would decline from the main event scene, and his patriotic gimmick would eventually be relegated to a tag team with the British Bulldog. But why? Why, after investing so much time, money, and storytelling into building him up, into anointing him as the next great American hero, did Vince McMahon pull the plug? The Lex Express, the body slam on the Intrepid, the patriotic positioning, all of it felt like a meticulous blueprint for success. A foolproof plan to create the next Hulk Hogan. Yet it failed. The answer lies not just in Luger's own shortcomings, but in a fundamental miscalculation by the very man who created the character. Lawrence Wendell Fowle, the man behind the persona, was an athlete in every sense of the word long before he ever stepped into a wrestling ring. He was a gifted football player, attending Penn State and then the University of Miami on scholarship, though his time there was cut short by off-the-field incidents. He went on to play for the Montreal Alouettes in the Canadian Football League and also had a stint with the Green Bay Packers. He would later say his wrestling career might never have happened if things had worked out in the National Football League. A career in professional football transitioned to a career in professional wrestling, and in 1985, Fowle became Lex Luger, adopting a ring name inspired by the Superman villain Lex Luthor. He was a natural fit for the business, possessing a physique that was nothing short of a Greek statue brought to life. He cut his teeth in the National Wrestling Alliance, becoming a key player in Jim Crockett Promotions and later World Championship Wrestling. He was a 5-time United States heavyweight champion, holding the title for a record number of days. He also captured the World Heavyweight Championship, a reign that was marked by a bizarre storyline where Ric Flair left the company with the original belt, forcing Luger to carry a makeshift title. Luger left the promotion in 1992, appearing in Vince McMahon's failed World Bodybuilding Federation venture before making his official federation debut as the Narcissist at the 1993 Royal Rumble. It was here that McMahon began his grand experiment. The Narcissist was a perfect fit for Luger's physique-obsessed character, but the plan soon shifted to transitioning him into the heroic figure the company so desperately needed after Hulk Hogan's departure. The body slam on the Intrepid was the launchpad, and the Lex Express was the vehicle. But for all the effort, all the pomp and circumstance, it never quite clicked. At some point before SummerSlam, it became clear to McMahon that he had to abort the plan because he realized Luger didn't have the same intangible connection with audiences that made Hogan a believable, long-reigning champion. While Luger had the look of a superhero, he didn't possess the raw, magnetic charisma that Hogan wielded so effortlessly. But to lay all the blame at Luger's feet would be a grave misjudgment. Vince McMahon made a key misstep himself, one that may have single-handedly sabotaged the whole project, and it came down to the seemingly trivial detail of the entrance music. Think about Hogan's theme, Real American. It was a quintessential rock anthem. The guitar riff was instantly recognizable, the lyrics were simple and memorable, and the energy was undeniable. It was a song that made you want to flex your muscles, chant along, and feel like you were part of the show. It was catchy, authentic, and perfectly encapsulated the larger-than-life persona of Hulk Hogan. Before Real American, Hogan came out to Eye of the Tiger for his first championship match in 1984, an anthem perfectly befitting a champion. Now consider Luger's theme, an orchestral rendition of Stars and Stripes Forever. It was stuffy and formal, a patriotic anthem more suited for a political convention or a 4th of July parade than a wrestling show. There were no lyrics for the fans to sing along to, no driving guitar riff to get the blood pumping. It felt corporate, sterile, and overly produced. The music made Luger seem less like a fighter for the people and more like a politician running for office. It obnoxiously made the Federation appear as though they were trying too hard to make Luger the next Hogan, instead of letting Luger be his own character. As insignificant as it may seem, this music disconnect could have been the game changer, the one thing that prevented Luger from truly connecting with the audience on an emotional level. Even with the perfect entrance music, he wasn't destined to be the next Hogan, but it might have gotten him over enough to convince Vince McMahon he could trust him with the championship. The music was a microcosm of the entire Lex Express run. It was focus group patriotism, a manufactured attempt to recreate an organic phenomenon. McMahon had fundamentally misunderstood what made Hogan's character work. He thought it was the patriotism itself, when in reality, it was the authentic feeling hero energy that resonated with the audience. The patriotic gimmick, stripped of a genuine connection, felt inauthentic. And when the audience is asked to believe in a manufactured hero, they often refuse. The Lex Express was a testament to the fact that you can't force a connection. Luger, through no fault of his own, became the victim of a miscalculation, a casualty of a grand plan that was built on a flawed foundation. The push was massive, the investment was significant, but the vital spark, the crucial link between performer and audience, was missing. After the failure of the SummerSlam and WrestleMania 10 title shots, Luger's star began to fade in the Federation. He would go on to have a tag team run with the British Bulldog as the Allied Powers, a brief, uninspired effort that felt like a holding pattern for a main event star who had been demoted. Their biggest moment was a failed tag team title shot against Owen Hart and Yokozuna. Luger's final match in the Federation was at a house show in September 1995. He then left the company to make a stunning return to World Championship Wrestling, a move that would send shockwaves through the wrestling world. Luger's return on the premiere episode of Nitro, just one night after a Federation house show, was one of the first major shots fired in the Monday Night Wars. He came out during a match between Sting and Ric Flair, a move that left his allegiances unclear for a time. He initially acted as a tweener, neither a face nor a heel, and quickly challenged Hulk Hogan for the World Heavyweight Championship. He would eventually join Kevin Sullivan's Dungeon of Doom, a stable dedicated to ending Hogan's reign, and later form an on-again, off-again alliance with his old friend Sting. He would be one of the key figures in the company's most prominent storylines, often wrestling and feuding with members of the New World Order. In a moment of redemption, he defeated Hollywood Hogan for the World Heavyweight Championship on an episode of Nitro. However, his reign was short-lived, as he lost the title back to Hogan just 5 days later. Luger would continue to be a staple of company programming until the company was acquired by the Federation in 2001. Yet in 2003, Luger's personal life collapsed in scandal and tragedy. A domestic dispute with his girlfriend Miss Elizabeth led to his arrest, and just weeks later she was found dead in their shared home after mixing pills with alcohol. Police uncovered a stockpile of illicit substances, resulting in felony drug charges that left his reputation in tatters. Further legal troubles followed, including a probation violation that landed him back in jail, cementing a period where the once-celebrated total package seemed irreparably broken. Next came a devastating spinal infarction in 2007 that left him temporarily paralyzed. He has since regained some mobility and reformed himself, striving to be an inspirational figure. And in 2025, redemption came when he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. A final recognition of a career that, while not reaching the heights of a Hulk Hogan, was still filled with championships, iconic storylines, and moments that shaped a generation of wrestling. Looking back, the story of Lex Luger's Federation run is a cautionary tale about the dangers of trying to manufacture a hero. McMahon had the look, the platform, and the storyline, but he lacked the one thing that truly makes a wrestling character great: a genuine connection with the audience. The Lex Express was an incredible spectacle, a bold attempt to recreate the magic of the Hulkamania era. But in the end, the music was wrong, the emotion was forced, and the hero, for all his physical prowess, was never truly given the tools to win over the hearts of the people. And so the experiment failed, and the All-American was left behind, a testament to the fact that even the most well-laid plans can be undone by the smallest miscalculations. The date is August 28, 1989. The Brendan Byrne Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey, pulses with electricity as SummerSlam reaches a fever pitch. Inside the squared circle, a most peculiar sight unfolds. A heavy-set man in garish yellow polka dots, sweat glistening under the arena lights, delivers a thunderous bionic elbow to the honky-tonk man. The crowd erupts, not in mockery, not in derision, but in pure, unadulterated adulation. This is Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream, and despite being dressed like a walking circus tent, 20,000 fans are cheering for him, screaming his name with the fervor typically reserved for conquering heroes. Here stands a paradox that would define one of professional wrestling's most fascinating chapters. The man in polka dots had just defeated the longest-reigning Intercontinental Champion in Federation history, yet his victory felt simultaneously triumphant and tragic. The crowd's reaction told one story: they saw through the absurd costume to the legend beneath. But the costume itself told another story entirely, one of corporate humiliation disguised as entertainment, which begs the question that haunts wrestling folklore to this day. If the fans loved Dusty Rhodes so deeply, why did Vince McMahon spend 2 years systematically trying to destroy his dignity? To understand the depths of this calculated humiliation, one must first comprehend the mountain Vince McMahon sought to reduce to rubble. Dusty Rhodes wasn't just another wrestler looking for his big break in the World Wrestling Federation. He was wrestling royalty, a self-made king who had built his empire not through genetic lottery or corporate machinery, but through raw charisma and an almost supernatural ability to connect with the common man. Long before he ever set foot in a Federation ring, Dusty had already achieved what most wrestlers could only dream of. He had transcended the business itself. In the territorial wrestling landscape of the 1970s and early 1980s, Rhodes was nothing short of a phenomenon. Standing just over 6 feet tall and carrying what charitable observers might call a working man's physique, he possessed none of the traditional attributes of a wrestling superstar. Yet somehow, impossibly, he became one of the most compelling figures the business had ever produced. His promos were streams of consciousness that bordered on poetry, filled with folksy wisdom and an authenticity that money couldn't buy. When Dusty spoke about being a common man for the common people, it wasn't a marketing slogan. It was gospel truth delivered by someone who lived it. The accolades include 3 NWA World Heavyweight Championship reigns and legendary feuds with Ric Flair that drew money across multiple territories, as well as a rivalry with the Four Horsemen that became the template for every great stable versus hero storyline that followed. He wasn't just a top star, he was the architect, serving as both performer and booker, crafting storylines that kept audiences coming back week after week. But perhaps most significantly, Dusty represented something that Vince McMahon's expanding empire couldn't control: authentic, homegrown stardom. While McMahon was busy acquiring territories and their assets, Rhodes remained stubbornly independent, a reminder of what wrestling had been before corporate consolidation. He was living proof that charisma couldn't be manufactured in a boardroom or enhanced in a gym. He was dangerous precisely because he was real. So when Dusty Rhodes signed with the World Wrestling Federation in 1989, it should have been a coronation. Here was a proven main event attraction, a man who could work with anyone and get them over in the process. Instead, Vince McMahon made a choice that would echo through wrestling history. He decided to make Dusty Rhodes a joke. The polka dots weren't just a costume choice, they were a statement. Where Dusty had once worn simple black trunks that let his personality shine through, now he was wrapped in bright yellow dots, looking like a children's birthday party decoration come to life. The symbolism was unmistakable. This was Vince McMahon's version of creative vandalism, but the polka dots were only the beginning. McMahon soon paired Rhodes with Sapphire, a corpulent woman whose dancing segments became the stuff of late-night comedy shows. Where Dusty had once cut promos that moved audiences to tears or rage, now he was relegated to dance segments and comedic vignettes. The man who had main evented against Ric Flair was now opening shows with choreographed routines that would have been embarrassing in a high school gymnasium. Yet even diminished, even humiliated, Dusty Rhodes refused to disappear. That SummerSlam victory over Honky Tonk Man wasn't an accident. It was proof that no amount of corporate manipulation could extinguish genuine star power. When Dusty delivered his patented bionic elbow and covered for the 3 count, the arena shook with approval. The fans had spoken, and their message was clear. They understood the true gravity of the star before them. The 1989 Survivor Series showcased this strange duality perfectly. Dusty captained a team of underdogs, and despite his ridiculous appearance, the crowd treated him like the legend he was. His eliminations of opposing team members were met with thunderous approval, each victory a small rebellion against the corporate machine that sought to diminish him. Here was a man reduced to cartoon character status, still commanding the respect and affection of audiences who understood quality when they saw it. WrestleMania 6 brought perhaps the cruelest twist in this ongoing saga. Dusty found himself embroiled in a feud with Macho King Randy Savage and his manager Queen Sherry, a storyline that positioned him as a lower card attraction rather than a main event player. The irony was striking. Dusty Rhodes, who had engaged in legendary feuds with the greatest wrestlers of his generation, was now working programs designed to keep him far from championship gold. Yet even here, his natural charisma elevated the material beyond its humble intentions. The summer of 1990 provided the most surreal chapter of this entire experiment. Prior to his loss to Randy Savage at SummerSlam, it was revealed that the $1 Million Man, the same man whose servant was mockingly assigned Dusty's birth name, had been paying Sapphire to betray Dusty. This was wrestling storytelling at its most cynical. The common man's dreams could always be bought and sold by those with deeper pockets. Even Dusty's allies were temporary, purchased commodities in Vince McMahon's corporate playground. By 1991, the experiment had run its course. Dusty Rhodes quietly departed the Federation, his contract allowed to expire without fanfare or farewell. The polka-dot period had ended not with drama or controversy, but with the soft whimper of a company moving on from a failed project. But what exactly had failed? Not Dusty Rhodes. He had maintained his dignity and connection with the audience throughout his ordeal. What had failed was the very premise of the humiliation itself. To understand why Vince McMahon felt compelled to humiliate Dusty Rhodes, one must understand the psychology of absolute power. McMahon wasn't just building a wrestling company, he was constructing a new reality where traditional wrestling values were subordinated to his vision of sports entertainment. Every major star who had made their name outside his system represented a threat to this new order. They were living reminders that wrestling greatness could exist independent of his corporate structure. Dusty Rhodes represented the old guard in its most dangerous form. He was beloved, he was proven, and he was completely self-made. His success in other territories wasn't just competition, it was an indictment of everything McMahon was trying to build. If a pudgy guy from Texas could become one of wrestling's biggest stars through nothing but personality and passion, what did that say about McMahon's expensive production values and manufactured characters? The polka dots, then, were an act of corporate dominance disguised as creative decision-making. By dressing Rhodes in ridiculous costumes and pairing him with comedy acts, McMahon was sending a message to every wrestler who had achieved success outside his empire that your previous accomplishments mean nothing here. In Vince's world, you are only what he allows you to be. The humiliation was a demonstration of power that served as both punishment and warning. There was also the matter of physical presentation. McMahon's federation was built on the foundation of larger-than-life physiques. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, and other muscled superheroes who looked like comic book characters brought to life. Dusty Rhodes, with his everyman appearance and beer gut, represented everything McMahon was trying to move away from. Yet perhaps most significantly, McMahon may have harbored personal resentment toward Rhodes dating back to their territorial days. Dusty had been one of the sharpest critics of McMahon's national expansion, using his platform to mock the corporate wrestling invasion. Those promos, delivered with Dusty's trademark passion, had positioned McMahon as a carpetbagger trying to destroy wrestling tradition. Now, with Dusty under contract, McMahon had the opportunity to flip that script, to make the critic dance to his tune. Yet despite every indignity heaped upon him, despite every ridiculous costume and demeaning storyline, Dusty Rhodes never lost the respect of the wrestling audience. They saw through the polka dots to the legend beneath, and their continued support became its own form of rebellion against corporate manipulation. Audiences recognized that they were witnessing an injustice, a great performer being systematically diminished by forces beyond his control. Their support for Dusty became a form of protest, a way of saying that they valued substance over style, character over costume, authenticity over artifice. This phenomenon extended beyond hardcore wrestling fans to casual viewers who might not have known Dusty's territorial history but could sense his genuine nature through the television screen. Children who knew nothing of his prior championships still cheered for the man in polka dots because something about him felt real in a way that other characters didn't. That authenticity couldn't be scripted, manufactured, or destroyed by corporate mandate. The ultimate irony of the polka dot period is that it failed to achieve its primary objective. Rather than diminishing Dusty Rhodes' legacy, it enhanced it. Wrestling fans are remarkably sophisticated consumers who understand the difference between character and performer, between corporate decision-making and individual talent. They recognized that Dusty's treatment was unjust, and their sympathetic response only strengthened his legend. When Dusty returned to WCW, he was welcomed back not as a damaged commodity, but as a conquering hero. His later career renaissance proved that true stardom transcends temporary setbacks. His influence as a trainer and mentor in WWE's developmental territories brought his story full circle. The man Vince had tried to diminish became one of the company's most valued behind-the-scenes contributors. Today, Dusty Rhodes is remembered not as the man in polka dots, but as the American Dream, one of wrestling's most important figures and the patriarch of a bloodline that continues to shape the business through his sons Dustin and Cody. The polka dot period has become a footnote to his legacy rather than its defining chapter, proof that authentic greatness cannot be manufactured or destroyed by corporate whim. In the end, Vince McMahon's attempt to humiliate Dusty Rhodes revealed more about the humiliator than the humiliated. It showed a man so insecure about his own creation that he felt compelled to diminish legends rather than learn from them. The polka dots were never about Dusty Rhodes. They were about Vince McMahon's need to prove that he alone controlled the narrative of professional wrestling success. But that August night in 1989, when 20,000 fans rose to their feet to cheer a man in ridiculous polka dots, they delivered their own verdict on corporate humiliation. They chose authenticity over artifice, heart over marketing, the American dream over corporate nightmares. In that moment, surrounded by thunderous applause, Dusty Rhodes had already won the only victory that truly mattered. The enduring love and respect of the people who understood exactly who he was, polka dots and all. May he rest in peace. The date is April 4th, 1993. The neon-drenched desert afternoon of Las Vegas is thrumming with an electric, almost Roman energy. Inside the grandiose open-air arena of Caesar's Palace, a crowd of nearly 17,000 people roars, their chants echoing off the colossal columns. This isn't just a wrestling event, it's a spectacle, a throwback to the gladiatorial contests of ancient Rome, but with a distinctly American flair. This is WrestleMania 9, billed as the world's largest toga party, and in the midst of this controlled chaos, a new kind of warrior is rising. His name is Tatanka. He moves with a quiet, focused intensity, a single red stripe bisecting his hair like a warpath. This is more than a gimmick, it's a declaration. He is Chris Chavis, but in the squared circle, he is a living embodiment of the Native American spirit. A noble warrior with an undefeated streak that stretches back over a year. He is pure, he is honorable, and he is a hero to a legion of fans who see in him a symbol of strength and righteousness. A year prior, he bested Rick Martel at WrestleMania 8, a rivalry where Martel had brazenly stolen his sacred eagle feathers to adorn his own attire. Their feud culminated at Survivor Series, where he triumphed once more, reclaiming the feathers that had been taken from him. Tonight he faces the self-proclaimed Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, the reigning Intercontinental Champion, a man who represents everything Tatanka is not. Michaels is brash, arrogant and ruthless, a master of deception and a purveyor of boy-toy theatrics. This match is a clash of two worlds, the traditional, mythic hero against the modern, cynical villain. The match is a whirlwind of action. Tatanka, with his power and ferocity, dominates early, but Michaels, ever the opportunist, weathers the storm, resorting to underhanded tactics to gain the advantage. Tatanka performs his signature war dance, a stomping, rhythmic taunt that channels the spirit of the bison, sending waves of excitement through the crowd. The back and forth is breathtaking, a masterclass in professional wrestling storytelling. As the match reaches its climax, Michaels sends Tatanka to the outside and leaps after him, but Tatanka evades him. Unable to make it back before the 10 count, Michaels is disqualified. Tatanka wins, but it's by countout, a victory that feels both triumphant and hollow. The Intercontinental Championship doesn't change hands, yet even without the title, the message is clear. The undefeated warrior, the rising star, has defeated one of the company's top heels on the grandest stage of them all. His future, it seems, is boundless. He stands tall, a man of honor in a Roman-themed arena, a living legend in the making. And for a time he was. The trajectory of his career seemed to follow a classic heroic arc, a seemingly unstoppable force on a collision course with destiny. The World Wrestling Federation, under the calculated direction of Vince McMahon, had successfully cultivated a unique and compelling character. They had given him the space to shine, to connect with the audience on a visceral level. The undefeated streak was his shield, his symbol of invincibility. It lasted for over 2 years on television, an astonishing feat in an era where losses were a staple of a wrestler's journey. It was a testament to the company's belief in him. He was being built into a main event player without needing a title. Following his victory over Michaels, Tatanka would be locked in a bitter feud with the villainous Ludwig Borga, a Finnish strongman who represented everything antithetical to Tatanka's proud heritage. Borga, with his anti-American rhetoric and brutal in-ring style, became the perfect foil. On a fateful night in October 1993, Borga, with a strategic distraction by Mr. Fuji, finally ended Tatanka's televised winning streak. In the aftermath of the match, Federation champion Yokozuna launched a vicious assault, sidelining him for the next 3 months. It was a crushing, almost mythic defeat, a fall from grace that only made his eventual comeback that much more compelling. After the 3-month hiatus, Tatanka returned, a fire lit within him. His next major storyline would be even more complex. Tatanka found himself embroiled in a feud with Erwin R. Shyster, the taxman, who hounded him over a ceremonial Lumbee headdress he had received. This storyline was a subtle yet powerful contrast between the purity of Tatanka's character and the cold, bureaucratic nature of the corporate machine. The headdress, a sacred gift, was now a taxable asset in the eyes of the ruthless heel. It was a brilliant piece of character work, a narrative that spoke to the clash of cultures and values. Tatanka, as a hero, wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting to defend his heritage and his people's honor. But as with all tragic heroes, there came a turn, a moment of profound change that altered his course forever. By the summer of 1994, the seemingly unbreakable hero began to crack. His feud with Lex Luger led to a shocking heel turn at SummerSlam, a moment that stunned audiences. Tatanka, frustrated and suspicious, accused Luger of being a sellout to the $1 Million Man. But in the end, it was Tatanka who sold out. He joined the villainous $1 Million Corporation, a stable of wrestlers who had been corrupted by money and greed. The proud warrior had fallen. He had forsaken his heritage, his honor, and his people, seemingly for a fistful of cash. The contrast was painful, and it effectively neutered much of the character's mythic appeal. The undefeated, honorable warrior was gone, replaced by a greedy, bitter shell of his former self. This storyline, while it gave him a new direction, marked the beginning of the end for Tatanka's run as a top-tier star. Though he featured in a tag team match at the 1995 King of the Ring, teaming with Psycho Sid against Bam Bam Bigelow and Diesel, the mystique had vanished. He was now just another heel in a sea of villains. The tragic fall from grace was complete, yet his heel turn was not the most pivotal event, leading to his ultimate departure. That moment came 5 months after his King of the Ring match, in the summer of 1995. The atmosphere around the Federation was changing, a different kind of darkness settling in. Allegations of wrongdoing had been swirling, and the company was in damage control mode. In August of 1995, a bombshell dropped. Tatanka was named in a lawsuit filed by a woman in Anaheim, California, stemming from a purported incident following a company event in late 1994. The accusations were horrific: assault, drugging, and a disturbing ritual of shaving half of the woman's head. While the allegations were later proven to be false and another wrestler was ultimately implicated, the damage was done. In the unforgiving public eye, Tatanka was guilty by association. In a move that speaks volumes about the ruthless nature of the business, Vince McMahon took action. Tatanka was suspended, reportedly as a preemptive measure to distance the company from the scandal. This suspension, even in the absence of a conviction, cast a long shadow. The character, once a symbol of honor and integrity, was now tainted by association. It was a career-defining moment, a public trial by fire that, despite his innocence, left him as damaged goods in the eyes of management. Even after he was fully cleared and reinstated with full pay, the momentum, the trust, and the appeal were gone. He was no longer the undefeated hero, nor was he even a compelling villain. He was a liability, a name linked to a scandal and a character that had lost its narrative steam. He would return to the company, but it was clear that his star had faded. He competed in the 1996 Royal Rumble, but he was treated as just another wrestler, a far cry from the formidable presence he once was. His final televised match, a non-title bout against the Federation champion Bret Hart, was a faint echo of the promise he once held. 2 months after his return, he was gone from the company. The story, as it's often told, ends here. A great talent, a compelling character, sidelined and ultimately released. He was, as the wrestling lexicon calls it, buried. This narrative, however, is not without its dissenters. Those tireless digital combatants who revel in sparring with strangers over wrestling-related events that unfolded 3 decades ago. Undoubtedly, there will be comments from those watching this very video stating that this is false and that Vince didn't bury him, citing how Tatanka left on his own accord. And in a way, they are right. Tatanka himself, in candid interviews, has acknowledged this. He has stated that he left the company to focus on his marriage, to start a family, and to reconnect with his faith. This noble, honorable reason for his departure seems to align perfectly with the character he once was, a man who prioritized family and honor above all else. But the deeper truth lies in the subtext of his own words. In that very same interview, he also stated that the company wasn't doing anything with the Tatanka character at that time. This is the critical, often overlooked piece of the puzzle. While he may have left on amicable terms, and while he may have turned the situation into a personal positive, the catalyst for his departure was ultimately a professional one. He wasn't being utilized. His character, once a top priority, had been de-emphasized to the point of irrelevance. The once bright future that shone so brightly at WrestleMania 9 had dimmed. The lawsuit and his subsequent suspension, even though he was innocent, had irrevocably changed Vince McMahon's perspective. In a cutthroat business where perception is everything, Tatanka had become a risk, a name that could bring unwanted scrutiny. McMahon, ever the shrewd businessman, chose to pivot. He no longer saw Tatanka as a rising star, but as a ghost of a scandal that had nearly tarnished his company. The tragic irony is that Tatanka's character was built on purity and honor, yet it was a baseless smear that ultimately led to his professional undoing in the company. He was a warrior, but he couldn't fight against a shadow. He was cleared, but the stain lingered. He was brought back, but he was no longer a priority. His departure was not an act of defiance, but a pragmatic decision born of a lack of professional opportunity. He saw the writing on the wall. The Federation was moving on, and so was he. His time as a prominent player had ended not in a blaze of glory, but in a quiet de-emphasis, a gradual sidelining that made his continued presence in the company unsustainable. The tragic hero had lost his narrative arc. He was no longer on a quest for honor, but adrift in a sea of forgotten characters. The warrior's journey continued, but it was a different kind of odyssey, one that took him through countless independent promotions and foreign countries, collecting minor victories that could never restore what was lost. When the company welcomed him back years later, it was not as the undefeated hero of old, but as a nostalgic artifact, a reminder of a more innocent time when a Native American warrior could captivate the world. In the end, the story of Tatanka is a cautionary tale about the unforgiving nature of professional wrestling and the brutal logic of a singular visionary like Vince McMahon. The mythic warrior, with his powerful undefeated streak and his noble heritage, was a beautiful creation. He captivated audiences and inspired a generation. But the machine that built him was also capable of burying him, not with a single decisive loss, but with a slow, grinding process of irrelevance. He left on his own terms, yes, but it was Vince McMahon who first pushed him toward the exit. The warrior walked away not from a fight he lost, but from one he was no longer being allowed to win. And in the silent spaces between the headlines and the official stories, that is the true tragic narrative of a man named Tatanka. The date is March 29, 1987. The air inside the Pontiac Silverdome is thick with history and anticipation, a seismic event known as WrestleMania 3. Over 93,000 screaming fans are on their feet, their collective energy a tangible force that seems to vibrate the very foundation of the massive dome. Tonight is defined by Titans, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. Their clash a cultural touchstone that will forever represent the golden age of professional wrestling. But beneath the shadow of that colossal main event, a different story was unfolding. One of immense promise, fleeting glory, and catastrophic self-sabotage. Earlier in the evening, the spotlight found the natural Butch Reed. Stepping into the ring to face the high-flying Coco Beware, Reed was a vision of athletic perfection. His physique was a marvel, meticulously sculpted, every muscle seemingly designed for power and explosive speed. The golden streak of his hair and the vibrant colors of his attire accentuated a magnetic, almost arrogant charisma. He didn't just walk to the ring, he stalked it, a predator fully aware of his own dominance. When the bell rang, he controlled the tempo, his moves crisp and impactful, eventually securing a decisive victory on the biggest stage wrestling had ever known. He was physical poetry in motion, a heavyweight who moved like a world-class sprinter. This moment, standing triumphant on wrestling's grandest stage, was the unquestionable apex of Butch Reed's World Wrestling Federation career. He was a rising star, a physical specimen whom Vince McMahon and the Federation machine had clearly earmarked for greatness, seemingly slated to be a prominent fixture for years to come. The industry buzz around him was significant. He had the rare, intangible quality of a main eventer. Yet, even as his arm was raised, the trajectory of his career had already been set for a premature, disappointing descent. This was just a glimpse of what could have been. The Federation had plans for him, plans that extended far beyond a mid-card victory, plans that involved championship gold, plans that would never materialize because, in one stunning act of professional negligence, he blew it. A star ready to shine, an anointed champion who never was. A cautionary tale forgotten by history's casual gaze. To comprehend this disappointment, we must first trace the roots of this extraordinary talent. Born Bruce Franklin Reed on July 11, 1954, his athletic destiny was apparent from his youth. A formidable college football player at the University of Central Missouri, his physical gifts were so remarkable that the National Football League came calling. In 1976, he signed a free agent contract with the Kansas City Chiefs. Though his time in professional football was fleeting, cut before the season began, the experience bequeathed him an athletic foundation and a competitive fire that would serve him well in the grueling world of professional wrestling. He learned the discipline of training and the necessity of elite physical conditioning, attributes that would define his look in the ring. He transitioned to the squared circle, debuting in 1978. Quickly adopting the moniker Hacksaw, Reed was immediately distinguishable. He was a power wrestler with the size of a heavyweight, but possessed the stunning agility of a world-class athlete. This rare, potent combination of brute force and smooth movement made him a unique commodity. He was a headliner waiting to happen, a truly compelling figure whose intensity was matched only by his natural athleticism. His early career saw him accumulate titles in the National Wrestling Alliance territories, but it was in Bill Watts' Mid-South Wrestling that he forged the persona that would attract the national spotlight. In the rough, intense environment of Mid-South, he was a true main event player. He entered as a heroic tag team partner to the beloved Junkyard Dog, only to turn on him in a betrayal that shocked the territory. This iconic heel turn cemented him as a top villain. He captured the North American Heavyweight Championship, feuded with the likes of Jim Duggan, and later went on to have a legendary time-limit draw with the World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair. Reed's ability to sell, to look dominant, and to execute complex matches made him a favorite of promoters who valued athleticism and intensity. By the time he, along with his new fast-talking manager, Slick, departed Mid-South and the Central States Territory for the World Wrestling Federation, he was a polished, proven commodity, poised for a monumental leap. They arrived in the Federation in late 1986. The transformation was immediate and telling. Hacksaw became the natural, dyeing his hair blonde and embracing an image of confident, muscular vanity. This was a classic Vince McMahon presentation, taking an established talent and repackaging them for a national audience, positioning them for a major run. Reed's early matches, particularly his feud with Tito Santana, showcased his polished style and devastating power, building momentum toward the career-defining moment at WrestleMania 3. He was consistently booked to look strong, a force against established fan favorites, clearly being readied for a higher echelon of competition. The victory over Coco B. Ware was not merely a win, it was a coronation. In the weeks that followed, that future became terrifyingly clear. Reed began targeting the newly crowned Intercontinental Champion, Ricky Steamboat, facing him on house shows and television tapings. The booking was meticulous, the slow build toward a major title change, a championship that would elevate Reed out of the mid-card and establish him as a secondary main event star, mirroring the role that Randy Savage had recently filled and transitioned from. The Intercontinental Championship was the workhorse title, the proving ground for future main eventers, and Butch Reed was poised to be its newest, most physically dominant bearer. The moment of destiny was scheduled for June 13, 1987, during a taping of Superstars in Buffalo, New York. Butch Reed was slated to defeat Ricky Steamboat and walk out as the new Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. This was the promised land, the fulfillment of years of hard work, the culmination of the Federation's investment in his potential. But Butch Reed did not show up. The reasons, in the immediate aftermath and the decades that followed, remained a murky mix of fact and speculation. Accounts varied, citing a contract dispute that escalated dramatically, or simply a staggering misunderstanding of his travel schedule. Whatever the internal reality, the undeniable fact remains. The man who was scheduled to receive the Intercontinental Championship belt simply failed to appear at the arena. For the Federation, a company operating on a relentless television schedule and global touring demands, this was a breach of professional conduct of the highest order, an act that shattered the trust of its top decision-makers. The entire carefully crafted storyline, the entire push, evaporated in that one shocking, unprofessional act. The ripple effect was immediate and historic, creating a compelling, dramatic irony. With no time to waste and a television taping to produce, the Federation needed a heel champion fast. Ricky Steamboat, in an improvised, shocking turn of events, dropped the title to the Honky Tonk Man, a mid-card Elvis impersonator who frankly had not been positioned for such a high-profile role. The Honky Tonk Man would go on to hold the title for an unprecedented 454 days, becoming arguably the most infuriating, enduring, and ultimately iconic Intercontinental Champion of that era. The gold that Butch Reed was supposed to wear instead graced the waist of a character whose long reign was a direct, accidental consequence of Reed's no-show. This unexpected chain of events created a legendary champion in Honky Tonk Man, but only by crucifying the career potential of Butch Reed. The consequences for Reed's career were immediate and severe. Though the Federation attempted to salvage his status, the momentum was irreversibly lost. The trust, the belief that he could carry a championship and uphold the rigorous professional demands of the top tier was shattered. He could no longer be depended upon. He was thrown into a program with the returning superstar Billy Graham, where Reed and the one-man gang injured Graham to explain the veteran's retirement. This led to a rivalry with Graham's new protege, Don Muraco. But even in a major program, Reed's star power was visibly dimmed. He was the first wrestler eliminated from Andre the Giant's team in the main event of the inaugural Survivor Series. He was then the first wrestler eliminated from the first-ever Royal Rumble match in January 1988. These sequential first eliminations were a clear, disheartening sign from the company that he was no longer a prioritized asset. The final chapter of his Federation run came at WrestleMania 4. He entered the championship tournament only to be eliminated in the first round by the man who would eventually win the title, Macho Man Randy Savage. The finish was a cruel metaphor for Reed's career. He dominated the match, showcasing his superior strength, but his arrogance proved fatal. Distracted by taunting Savage's manager, Miss Elizabeth, Reed climbed the turnbuckle only to be caught, slammed, and finished by the diving elbow drop. It was a loss rooted not in lack of talent, but in a crippling lack of focus and professionalism. Soon after, Butch Reed was gone from the company. The narrative of Butch Reed, however, did not end there. While he had fallen short of superstardom in the Federation, his talent remained undeniable. He transitioned to World Championship Wrestling, where he was paired with Ron Simmons, and under the management of Teddy Long, they formed one of the most physically imposing and celebrated tag teams of the era. Doom. Initially masked, Doom was a force of nature. Once unmasked, their dominance became undeniable. Managed to perfection, Reed and Simmons captured the World Tag Team Championship at Capital Combat. They enjoyed a powerful reign, successfully defending the gold against the best the company had to offer, including the legendary Steiner brothers. This period marked a powerful resurgence for Reed, proving he could excel at the highest level, even if the main event singles championship had eluded him. He was a champion again, albeit in a tag team capacity, finding stability and success in a promotion less rigid than the World Wrestling Federation. But even this triumphant era was destined to end with betrayal. Following a tag team loss, Reed turned on Simmons, cementing a final intense feud that culminated with Simmons defeating Reed in a brutal steel cage match at Super Brawl. This act of violence was a symbolic end to Reed's last major national run. He would eventually leave the promotion, moving on to the independent and regional circuits. Butch Reed tragically passed away on February 5, 2021, at the age of 66, following health complications associated with 2 heart attacks and COVID-19. He possessed all the essential qualities: the look, the power, the athleticism, and the charisma. He was scouted, signed, and positioned for the ultimate prize, the Intercontinental Championship, a belt that was intended to launch him to the top of the card. Butch Reed was built for greatness, yet a single mistake kept him from the Intercontinental title that should have been his. His strength at WrestleMania 3 and dominance in Doom showed his star power, but the gold he never held is his lasting shadow, proving that in wrestling, talent only matters if you seize the moment. The date is January 24th, 1993. The event is the Royal Rumble, the annual gauntlet that promises one victor a direct path to the main event of WrestleMania. The Arco Arena in Sacramento is charged with the palpable anticipation of a crowd expecting a spectacle, but utterly unprepared for the monstrosity about to descend upon them. The match is underway, and then suddenly he enters. Not as an official entrant, not with the typical fanfare of a numbered competitor, but as an apparition of pure, intimidating size, a nightmarish spectacle summoned by the devious manager Harvey Whippleman. He is billed as Giant Gonzalez, and his silhouette alone is a betrayal of the known laws of physics. The sheer scale of the man is a cosmic joke played on the professional wrestling ring, a canvas designed for mortal men. He is an 8-foot tower of terror, a fleshy skyscraper that blots out the arena lights. His target is immediate, absolute, and sacrosanct: The Undertaker. The dead man, the mythological creature of the squared circle, a man who had already established himself as a supernatural force, a chilling harbinger of doom. The Undertaker, the immovable object, was about to meet the unimaginable force. As Gonzalez lumbered to the ring, the audience's roar of excitement turned to a collective gasp of disbelief, a low, stunned murmur that spoke volumes. The man wore a full-body suit, airbrushed with crude, almost cartoonish musculature and adorned with bushy hair, a design that, while intending to enhance his giant physique, ironically made him seem even more alien, less a wrestler and more a creature from a B-movie horror flick. What followed was a brutal, one-sided demolition. Gonzalez, in a stunning disregard for the established rules of the Royal Rumble, entered the ring and attacked The Undertaker. With a chilling casualness, he knocked The Undertaker over the top rope, eliminating him from the Royal Rumble despite not being an official contestant. It was a power move, a clear declaration that a new, terrifying hierarchy of size and menace had just been established in the World Wrestling Federation. He then proceeded to throw the supposedly unstoppable deadman around the ring like a discarded rag doll, a child's toy he had grown tired of. The audience was in shock, frozen in a moment of wrestling history that defied their expectations. The sight of The Undertaker being effortlessly hoisted, manhandled, and then unceremoniously chokeslammed was an unprecedented violation of his persona. The immediate aftermath saw a flurry of referees attempting to restore order, their futile gestures only emphasizing the giant's overwhelming presence. The Undertaker, meanwhile, was left utterly defeated, the image of his elimination by an outsider a profound stain on his dark mystique. His manager, Paul Bearer, rushed to his side, helping him to his feet, but the damage was done. The dead man was enraged, humiliated, and, in a rare display, completely exposed. Behind the scenes, the animosity between The Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez, whose real name was Jorge Gonzalez, was even more intense, a genuine thorn in the dead man's side. The Undertaker, whose professional wrestling career was reaching its stride, was infamously vocal about his disdain. The root of his frustration was manifold, but primarily centered on Gonzalez's lack of professional wrestling experience. As The Undertaker would later recall, working with the Giant created an immense physical toll on him. This was likely due to a confluence of factors. Gonzalez's sheer, unnatural size made him inherently difficult to wrestle, as his long limbs and center of gravity made standard maneuvers awkward or impossible. Moreover, his inexperience and size meant he wrestled stiff, a term for executing moves with excessive and uncontrolled force. The story of Giant Gonzalez, the man, begins far from the bright lights of a wrestling ring, in El Colorado, Formosa, Argentina, where Jorge Gonzalez was born on January 31, 1966. His phenomenal size, a result of gigantism, would define his entire existence. Before wrestling, Gonzalez's massive frame first found a purpose in basketball, and quickly rose through the ranks in Argentina, using his size to his advantage. He was so significant that he caught the eye of the Argentine national team coach, Leon Najnudel, and represented his country in international tournaments. This eventually led to the pinnacle of his basketball career. In the 1988 NBA draft, the Atlanta Hawks selected Gonzalez in the third round. However, the rigorous physical demands of professional basketball proved too much. Partly due to a serious knee injury, Gonzalez was unable to fully adapt, and his dream never truly materialized on the court. It was an unexpected pivot that launched his career as a giant spectacle. The owner of the Atlanta Hawks at the time was media mogul Ted Turner, who also owned World Championship Wrestling. Turner saw a different kind of value in the colossal Argentine, a marketing spectacle, and in 1988, Gonzalez was offered a job as a professional wrestler. After over a year of intensive training, he was introduced to the wrestling world in 1990 and positioned as a fan favorite, his size making him a natural attraction. His storyline role was clear: the ultimate gentle giant, ready to battle the established villains. Over the next 2 years, he was consistently booked to establish his colossal credentials. He feuded with the likes of Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship and was placed in high-profile novelty matches. He was used to settle the question of who was the true giant of the promotion, often squaring off against other large men like Sid Vicious and One Man Gang. The visual alone of him towering over men who were themselves considered giants was a spectacle the company exploited to its fullest. He was a visual currency, and his time here served as an apprenticeship, preparing him for his destiny as the ultimate antagonist. In 1993, Jorge Gonzalez made the fateful leap to the World Wrestling Federation, and with it, his persona was fundamentally altered. Gone was the amiable giant. In his place was the nightmare version. Giant Gonzalez, a man who looked like an airbrushed, monstrous yeti, complete with the absurdly designed bodysuit. The Federation's goal was immediate and singular: position him as the most formidable obstacle ever faced by The Undertaker. The dramatic, non-sanctioned elimination at the Royal Rumble was merely the opening shot in what would be a 9-month, physically grueling and emotionally charged feud. Gonzalez, managed by the insidious Harvey Whippleman, became The Undertaker's chief nemesis. The rivalry was a classic Federation horror movie, a battle between two supernatural forces, one based on death and darkness, the other based on sheer brute size. An infamous house show incident crystallizes this tension perfectly. Exhausted from a brutal double-header, The Undertaker repeatedly instructed Gonzalez to strike his shoulder blades, only for the giant to persistently nail him across the neck, causing debilitating stingers. Mid-match, feeling his fingers go numb again, The Undertaker snapped. He unleashed a barrage of genuine strikes on the bewildered giant, unable to hold back. The stoic deadman had broken. His colossal opponent wasn't just incompetent, he was dangerous. Gonzalez's limited skill and overwhelming size meant The Undertaker carried everything, which he later claimed took years off of his career. The damage was real, the frustration justified, further amplifying their grueling feud. At WrestleMania 9, the colossal nature of the opponent, the drama of the storyline, and the spectacle of the outdoor Las Vegas setting should have created a classic. Instead, the match, a notorious entry in WrestleMania history, ended in controversy. After a back and forth that exposed the Giant's limited in-ring ability and taxed The Undertaker's patience, Gonzalez resorted to cheating. He used a chloroform-soaked rag, a classic low-budget villain's weapon provided by Whippleman, to knock out The Undertaker. The Giant was disqualified, and The Undertaker maintained his still nascent WrestleMania undefeated streak. The ending was a necessary narrative trick. The Giant was too big to be pinned or submitted cleanly at the biggest show of the year, so he had to be defeated by an act of villainy, thus preserving his destructive aura. The rivalry did not end there. Whippleman and Gonzalez upped the ante, recruiting Mr. Hughes to their cause. The trio viciously attacked The Undertaker and Paul Bearer, committing a crime considered sacrilegious within the dead man's mythology. They stole his urn, the supposed source of his power and immortality. This act escalated the feud beyond a simple wrestling rivalry into a high-stakes spiritual war. The final chapter of this taxing saga was written at SummerSlam 1993 in the aptly named Rest in Peace match. This was The Undertaker's chance for definitive closure and revenge. In a brutal contest, The Undertaker finally achieved the impossible. He defeated Giant Gonzalez cleanly to end the feud, reclaiming his urn and restoring his power. The immediate aftermath of this final defeat saw a seismic shift in Gonzalez's character arc. Humiliated by the loss, and perhaps finally realizing the manipulatory nature of his manager, Gonzalez turned on Harvey Whippleman. This face turn was a desperate attempt by the Federation to salvage the Giant's career. The sight of Gonzalez tossing his diminutive manager around after months of unwavering villainy provided a satisfying moment for the audience, but it did little to fundamentally change the perception of the Giant's in-ring limitations. The intended next feud, a battle with the highly athletic Adam Bomb, never fully materialized. The Giant's final significant appearance in the WWF was in a 20-man battle royal for the Intercontinental Championship on Monday Night Raw. 3 days later, on October 7, 1993, the Federation announced that Gonzalez's contract had expired. His wrestling career continued in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling. While the Japanese style, often emphasizing strong style and spectacle, was perhaps more suited to his limitations, the end was inevitable. His final singles match was in February 1995, and his last tag team match came in December of that year. The physical and health issues that shadowed Jorge Gonzalez's life, a tragic side effect of his gigantism, were finally catching up. In January 1996, the man who was once the tallest creature in the Federation's universe retired from professional wrestling and returned home to Argentina. His later years were marked by severe health decline, most notably due to type 1 diabetes and failing kidneys, which eventually necessitated the use of a wheelchair and a dialysis machine. In a poignant gesture, his former manager, Harvey Whippleman, would send his own money to help support Gonzalez and his family. The Argentine Basketball Federation also offered financial assistance, a nod to the Giant's forgotten life before the wrestling spotlight. On September 22, 2010, at the age of 44, Jorge Gonzalez passed away due to complications from his chronic health issues. Giant Gonzalez left an indelible mark on the Federation, a towering spectacle whose bizarre suited presence remains seared into 90s wrestling memory. Size was the story, pure and simple, yet his legacy is defined by the brutal toll he exacted on The Undertaker. Gonzalez became a necessary evil, an inexperienced force of nature who transformed scripted matches into genuinely grueling ordeals. The fiction became reality, stiff, taxing, physically punishing. For one shocking moment in 1993, Gonzalez was the Tower of Terror who effortlessly hurled the unstoppable Deadman from the ring, creating perhaps The Undertaker's most physically daunting rivalry. One-dimensional but unforgettable, Gonzalez pushed the legend to his breaking point, forging a suspenseful feud that defined the new generation era. May he rest in peace.